Listen, the music industry is the hardest place for anybody to take care of themselves.
Yeah.
The road is the most difficult job. You know, it looks sexy on the outside, but that will break you. It will break you. There's
Mm,
very few people that really can have the routine because also to stay really healthy on the road requires that you have some kind of an exercise program in place. And, you know, I remember I
yep.
toured with Black Eyed Peas with Julie, and I remember we went out on tour and they had a whole kind of a gym on the bus and a caterer that made beautiful food that was really healthy and a masseuse and like, but all those things cost money. So for most artists, there's no way. And the early years where you're laying the foundation is really where a lot of artists don't get those first few years. It takes such a toll. It takes a toll. I still have a difficult time going on the road and working from the road, staying healthy on the road. There's so much temptation, boredom. It's so difficult to keep your families together. The very thing that nurtures and feeds us is the very thing we're disconnected from.
This is the Conscious Economics Podcast, and I'm your host, Rhiannon Rosalind. This is the place where we explore people, planet, profit, and art through the lens of the new economy. If you're interested in changing yourself, getting more creative, or changing the system at large, then this is the podcast for you. Tune in every other week as we explore these topics with amazing guests. We'll go deep, we'll go heart-centered and soul-felt as we go into how we change ourselves and change the world. Hello, everyone. Rhiannon here. I've got a brutal head cold, so I sound a little funny today. I apologize, but I have an incredible episode. Sandy Pandya is one of our great, great friends. She's the founder of ArtHaus, and ArtHaus has become a great partner of Conscious Economics. So just to give you a little bit of her background, Sandy is an artist manager and label executive who forged her own path in the industry as one of the early pioneers, one of the only women. Back when she started, the music industry was a very male-dominated space, especially in the space of management and label ownership. And so Sandy has really, really been one of our pioneers. She's an incredible energy and personality, and she talks about this in the episode, but she jokes that she's learned and mastered the art of turning a no into a yes in business while advancing the careers of artists that she represents. Some of the shortlist of her clients notable: Doc McKinney, Serena Ryder, Julie Black, Tegan and Sarah, Adria Kane, and Talk. So today, Sandy leads ArtHaus Media, which is a company she launched in 2018 with Serena Ryder, and it's got a not-for-profit arm as well, ArtHaus Community, which is where we do a lot of our partnership. And building on that, ArtHaus Community is really centered around the pillars of community collaboration and culture. And ArtHaus endeavors to provide emerging artists and creatives with accessibility, pay-it-forward opportunities, and accommodation like affordable housing, initiatives to help get albums off the ground with free recording studio time. The list goes on. She's also currently on the board of directors for the Canadian Music Industry Association, the Unison Benevolent Fund, as well as the Junos Music Advisory Committee. And she's had her own awards as well. To date, she's been awarded by the Music Managers Forum with the 2019 Honor Roll Award and by SEMA as well. So she is just a powerhouse. She's hilarious. You're going to enjoy this conversation, and I think you're going to learn a few things as well. So let's give it up for Sandy. Hi, Sandy. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me, Rhiannon.
Yeah, it's going to be, I obviously know your story because we've spent a lot of time together, but I just thought it would be so amazing to have you on the show because there's so many incredible creatives and artists that are listening in as part of our audience. And I look up to you. I see you as a new economy visionary and leader. I think everything that you stand for, what you've built, who you are, how you do it is so, so inspiring. So it's my honor to have you on today. And I'd love to start off by really understanding how you got to this space, how you built this career in the music industry for yourself. So what's your story? How did you end up here? Let's start there.
Well, you know what? I actually have fluked onto it. I went to university and studied psychology and sociology, and I really wanted to work with kids. And I, in fact, did work in a group home for years, and they actually helped put me through university. And then that job got super intense, like year two, because I live with those kids too. It was a place called Bosco Homes out west in Saskatchewan. And the guy that ran that was this guy, Father Larry. And I think he got into some trouble later on, many, many years after I'd left. But they also were the starters. They have the biggest country music festival in Canada called the Big
Oh,
Valley
wow.
Jamboree. So that was cool. My dad catered some of the food for that. And that was really cool. But anyway, I went to university, and then kind of like in that third year, it was like, oh man, we got to pay tuition. How are we going to do this? And I traveled through Europe just after high school. And so I was like, okay, maybe we can do a European style cafe. And so it was just this organic kind of a thing. I already have grown up in the restaurant industry because my father was a restaurateur. And so he had this restaurant that was just open during the day. It was a cafeteria attached to another restaurant. Basically, we went in there and it was a total communal kind of place. We shared all the money with all the staff. There were 6 of us, and they all were friends we went to university with or friends we knew. And we basically started this place called Cafe Gogo, which is my sister's name, Dr. Gogo.
Wow.
And we had like 8 items on the menu, not many stuff, art shows, poetry readings, music. And so really it was from that. But the place became so successful. It would be lined up out the door. Like, I mean, it was crazy. It was just so successful. So that led me into the music industry, but I learned so many amazing things from that experience that I utilize every day in my. And one of those is, Maya Angelou says people will forget what you said and what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And so that was our big ammo for Cafe Gogo. Is like if there was a lineup out the door, we would take them a samosa, we would give them water, really treated people really, really great. Like, especially if people were waiting
Mm.
outside for, an hour to get in, which often was the case because it was just so busy. And so it was this the whole idea that details matter and how you treat people, how you make them feel really, really matters. And, here we are, like
Mm.
we're in a business of people. That's the business here,
Yes.
right?
It's so beautiful hearing you explain that because that is how I know you. I know you as someone who is integrity first and who makes people feel a very particular way. I feel everyone feels a little bit more special in your presence. It's like you can see that or you bring that out in people. And what's interesting is, as a music manager and someone who's built this fantastic career, we hear a lot in the industry of artists leaving their managers and like issues happening, but you've had this legacy and longevity, with some of your big artists that you've served. Like I think about the relationship with you and Serena Ryder and how long you have worked together and the beautiful, like loving relationship that you have. And it is that piece. It's that Maya Angelou quote. Like it does matter how you make people feel. And do you think that that translates into management and music management? Like, what would be your advice for music managers that are, struggling to figure out how to really serve their artists? How do you see that role? Because it's not just about the business, it seems, for you. It feels really like family.
Yeah, for me, I run my operation like a family. And it's also why, by the way, I got the job with the kids because I had no credentials to really be working with, these were all kids that were wards of the government and had come from just brutal abusive. I mean, basically all the girls by the time they were 12 were, in prostitution and I had one kid that had like murdered his mother, and I mean, it was just crazy what was going on. Just the kind of trauma these kids came from. But the one thing that the kids didn't, I remember Father Larry saying to me, "We really want to hire you because we feel like you have a real sense of family, and you come from a real great family history. And what these kids don't have is that." And so we need somebody here that really could show them by example. This is what it feels like to be loved. and this is what it feels like to be appreciated and wanted and be believed in, you know? And so it's interesting you're saying that because I always say it's like a family here. And sometimes that gets me into trouble because it gets too close
Mhm.
and then it's really, really hard to distance from what is the business. But I prefer to run it like that because for me, it's fulfilling. It gives me
Yes.
that feeling, and I've grown up in that kind of a way, so it's really
Mm.
enriching for me, and I'll take the L's that come with it, you know?
I agree with you. I find myself running my business similarly, and I see the people that work as part of our team, of our movement as family, and I treat them that way. And I think that's why your family at ArtHaus and our family at Conscious Economics got on so well, because there was a resonance in the way that we approach work and the way that we approach that dynamic. And so now I feel like I've got an extended family with ArtHaus, and it feels like I'm walking in the door and I'm able to kind of leave the day and all of the worries and be open and honest and envision and dream. And it's so beautiful. And I wonder what you think about us being women leaders and the role that that plays. And I know you've been a pioneer as a woman in the industry. It's a male dominated industry, in particular in the role that you play. So what's your story around that? How have you managed that? What have you learned? What have you noticed as being a woman in this position?
Oh gosh. Well, when I started, there wasn't many women in the industry. I can really almost count. I think Sherry Jones was maybe the only manager. Sudha Karshe shortly after me. But like there wasn't that many people to have in terms of like women to mentor you or to look up to. I always say to young female leaders or artists, like try to find other women to mentor you because that's the one thing I never ever had, And so a lot of it was
Mm.
you just learned as you went. And, I think from very early on, I realized I wasn't going to take no for an answer because I dealt with all men. I mean, 99% men. And so I still use that slogan because, if someone says no to me, I want to do this with my artist. So I just find another way to ask that question and another way to ask it. Because the reality is, when most people are telling you no that are in powers of positions like that, they actually are just saying it to come from a place of power and ego. So there isn't really a valid reason for why they're generally saying no. And that's something I learned very early on working around all dudes. And I was like, why are you saying no? That's a really great idea I had because I think other people want to own those ideas or other people want to, in particular, maybe men would feel threatened, or back then anyway, because there wasn't many women. And the women that were in positions of power were generally like head publicity or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Specific parts of the industry.
Yeah, it's like that's super janky. You know what I mean? Like okay, that's the only job. And so nowadays, I mean, it's so great to see like all the women that are like presidents of
Yeah.
record companies, and I love it. I love it.
Yeah. What you're really talking about is how much has changed. And that when you go back and you look at even just a decade ago or a few, you can see that it wasn't the same. The landscape wasn't the same. So we see the change and we see the shift, but I think there are still dynamics that we have to navigate as we know as women. And I know in talking to you and laughing with you and sharing our war stories, of being women in very male dominant industries, it's tough. It's really, really tough. And I think that one of the things that happened to me is I learned how to play that game and be at that table. And I lost a bit of a part of my softness or my feminine essence as I really started to mask with this masculine energy to try and kind of match what was going on. And I think sometimes I pay the price for that in my private relationship or in my own health, like real things, burnout, just pushing too hard sometimes. And so as I kind of transition into that conversation, you and I have talked a lot about mental health and wellness, in particular around artists. And I want to talk about that. But first, how about you? Like, how do you stay well? How do you stay balanced and grounded when you're doing so much?
Well, listen, the pandemic was the biggest blessing. I really, really feel like that was the earth saying, we need to take a break here. We need a pause, you
Yeah.
know? And that was so exhilarating because I think some of, like, it just gave us time to dream and to really, really think about how, we always say around here, execution's Everest. You can have all the great ideas you want, but to execute
Yeah.
them is really another story altogether. And the pandemic was a really, really great healing time, I feel, even though it was so challenging for artists because it meant we were the hardest hit industry in the pandemic because it meant that all the live work, all that was gone, just like that. Even so, though, I feel like just this breath, we needed to take that breath. And so for
Mm.
me personally, it was a really great time to assess like how to really try to take care of myself. And,
Mm.
like as you know, Toronto was in the biggest lockdown in the country. And so like even simple things like you couldn't go to the park or whatever. And so that brought on stuff like, okay, let's try to do some yoga because you were kind of confined to your own home, right? And so what are the ways we can do so that was really, really great. But listen, the music industry is the hardest place for anybody to take care of themselves.
Yeah.
The road is the most difficult job. It looks sexy on the outside, but that will break you. It will break you. There's
Mm.
very few people that really can have the routine because also to stay really healthy on the road requires that you have some kind of an exercise program in place. And, I remember I
Yep.
toured with Black Eyed Peas with Julie. And I remember we went out on tour and they had a whole kind of a gym on the bus and a caterer that made beautiful food that was really healthy and a masseuse and like, but all those things cost money. So for most artists, there's no way. And the early years where you're laying the foundation is really where a lot of artists don't get those first few years. It takes such a toll. It takes a toll. I still have a difficult time going on the road and working from the road, staying healthy on the road. There's so much temptation, boredom. It's so difficult to keep your families together. The very thing that nurtures and feeds us is the very thing we're disconnected from, right? The people that love us, like we're so disconnected from all that because if you have kids, you can, so it's a very,
Yeah.
very difficult. I know that it's so easy, like, wow, you're a rock star and it's glamorous. And I always feel for my artists because I think, oh my gosh, like, and don't forget that not only have you done the show, but the next morning you're waking up and having to do interviews. And you have a radio song, then it's early morning radio stuff. You're doing press. And then oftentimes where the food, you can forget about eating decent food out there. Right?
Totally.
If you're a
Yeah.
vegetarian, guess what? You're probably going to start eating meat because there's very few options. Or if you're healthy kind of options like that,
Yeah.
right? And even now,
Yeah.
it's dismal.
Yeah.
It's dismal.
Well, and it's also because, and like people listening might be like, well, why is it so hard? But when you think about it, after a gig, it could be 2 o'clock in the morning. Everything's closed. Like you really have to be preparing. It costs money to be healthy. It costs money to get fresh and organic and all of these things. And you're on this strapped budget and you're going from town to town. And as you are getting started, you're in remote places sometimes and you're playing, little gigs and little shows and in small towns with a few traffic lights. Like it happens. So there's so much to it. But you always seem so effervescent. Like you always seem so gorgeous, so like put together. Like I see you come into a meeting and I know you've just come off the road and like you've come off some janky plane and you still manage to have this air about you. And I'm like, how does she do it? Like what is your secret? So there's got to be something else going on
No,
over there. Is
it's
it
I'm
good
probably
genes or
faking
like,
it. I don't know.
oh
It's
my
funny you're saying
gosh.
that because oftentimes I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel so tired. But I tell you something, I so love what I do. And I was thinking
Yeah.
about this the other day that like in terms of like when you do something from a place of love and passion,
Yeah.
there's an unbound energy. I mean, it's endless energy. And I feel like that's where maybe you see that. Like, I just so love it. I
Mm.
mean, don't get me wrong. There's days where I just go, oh, God, I'm going to throw up. I'm going to vomit. And I want It's like in any job. But for the most part, I'm so fortunate to work in this kind of industry with all these beautiful, creative humans around me. And it's so
Hmm.
inspiring. And I get to learn like now from the younger generation, like, and that's the other thing. I think a lot of people think they know it all, especially speaking like in terms of management. A lot of managers are peddling their own kind of brand and their own thing nowadays. I see like, it's like, are you selling your own thing or the artist thing? Like, what exactly is going on? Like, are you doing it?
Yeah.
And so I think it gets like distorted what's going on here a little bit, right? But for me, I've been always really clear that I represent these people, and my job is to help them execute their vision for what they want to
Mm.
do in their careers. And I'm getting in there and getting dirty with them too. It's not like I'm just like, okay, a yes person, because that's not my job. But it's so gratifying to work in the arts, because I really think the musical arts might be one of the only true art forms. You know what I mean? Like a really, in a real kind of a way, like just in terms of tapping into that creativity and where that comes from and all that, like, inspires me.
Yeah, I think it's also with music, it's the act of actually in front of a live captive audience expressing the art vibrationally and getting that direct feedback. So, like a painter is usually alone when they're painting their piece or whatever, but I see what you're saying with music and that being that very like tactical, effervescent experience. And so that has its own energy to it. It has its own dopamine hit to it, quite honestly. Like it can be addictive because it's beautiful. It's like exciting and you get to be a part of that. So I can imagine that that's really uplifting. How did you manage? Because I know your son is so amazing. He's so talented. He's like gorgeous like you, all the things. But how did you manage being a mom in this business
Oh,
and dealing with that?
it was so hard. Oh my God, Rhiannon, it was so hard. Because also his dad was a musician. So I remember when he was really, really little, not even a year old, his dad was out on tour in Europe all during, like when Checkpoint Charlie came down, he was on tour in Europe. And like I have an amazing family. So, and also his father's side is an amazing family. So we leaned on that a lot. But, I worked from home like for that first year, breastfeeding him. I mean, it was crazy. I had someone help me for a couple of hours, but like, it was really, really difficult, right? Because we also didn't have the
Yeah.
resources to hire someone to really help us, or like financial
Yeah.
resources. So I now think back to it and go, wow, how did we do that? Because I see new mothers nowadays and it's like, whoa, we didn't have that, or that you had these rickety like strollers that like got stuck
Yeah.
snow and you know,
You mean you didn't have a glam fashion stroller, Sandy?
you gotta puke on your shirt and answering the doorbell for the UPS, and oh my goodness, it was crazy. It was crazy. But he's such an amazing kid and he turned out so great. So I feel like we did something right.
You absolutely did something right, which you happen to do with everything that
Uh,
you touch, it seems. This podcast is brought to you by Mindfulness and Money. Mindfulness and Money is our new annual membership program designed to meet you where you are at and thoughtfully help you heal your issues with money. Join Asil Albaba, our in-house financial therapist, and myself, Rhiannon Rosalind, as we help you uncover all the deep-seated blocks that are preventing you from living your most authentic, powerful expression with money and out in the world. So if you're interested in joining, you can go ahead to consciouseconomics.ca and click on Mindfulness and Money to find out how to sign up. There's also a free trial option for those of you that want to dip your toe in before making a commitment for the year. The program is designed to be a democratized access for financial coaching and financial therapy. We have some very accessible pricing for you with options within as well, so that you can make your own conscious decision what you are able to afford as you start this healing journey. We hope to see you there. I want to go into, so one of the things that I've really noticed about you, and it's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show today, because this show is all about new economy visionary leaders. And I find that new economy leaders are leaders that can really work at the intersection of multiple different modalities and businesses, and they sort of know how to blend. And when I sit with you, I mean, the amount of creative ideas that come out of you in even just one half an hour sitting is actually like borderline overwhelming. It's just so unbelievable that your creative capacity is so open that it just seems like source is just channeling through ideas all the time through you. And with that, you've developed this unbelievable organization with ArtHaus on the community side and the music side and the management side and the label. And so I wonder, how do you deal with having such vast creative energy? How do you channel it properly? How do you ground it? How do people around you react to it? Because I think that it's something that some of us listening, we can relate to that idea, but you are an executor. So how do you manage the overwhelming amount of creative energy that you hold and the execution part? And how do you find that balance?
I'm sure they all think I'm batshit nuts around here. But I'm really glad you brought up the community side. So that is something that the pandemic allowed to just dream that dream. And, we started with our first kind of community based thing was the art of wellness, because there you were, all these artists, their income was just decimated, just like that, full stop. And as Serena's had a whole mental health journey. And so through that, her dream was always to like, okay, let's try to do something so that people kind of, coming up in the industry when they're having these struggles, just to have a real dialogue around that, and not to make it such a taboo. And so that's really where the community pieces started. Was I still remember that
Mm-hmm.
very first Art of Wellness class, which was on Zoom during the pandemic, all artists, and we all had like, it was a really emotional time, as you can imagine, for all of us, because
Mm-hmm.
also my
I
livelihood was
know.
gone just like that in that minute. But we're now on our 19th or 20th iteration of that Art of Wellness program.
Wow.
And it really was the impetus for all these other pieces, because in that first session, you could see, wow, if
Mm-hmm.
we could really try to build a community and support each other. This whole idea, Rhiannon, right? Like, it's like, and we're lucky, by the way, because the community we gravitate has come to us too. So we feel really lucky for that. It's not just a one-way street. But I always think if you build the house, the people will come. Right. So I'm really, really proud about what we've been able to do with the community. And it's just like, from whether it's especially our partnership with you guys, and you are family now to us, yourself, Jackie, your whole team.
Mm-hmm.
We met you guys through that community piece, right?
Yeah, you did. Absolutely.
So whether it's like our On the House studio program, where we've got like a new program starting this year, which is really in the house, it's called Open House, where we've always had a drop in before, which we had at our Art House North prior to the pandemic also. So we're going to
Yeah.
broaden that. Our partnership with a Walk of Fame for
Mm-hmm.
the emerging artists, our partnership with Canaccess, who's a big driver for our programs, the On the House studio program, also our Billy Bishop program, the City of Toronto. I mean, there's so many programs. Dr. Noah runs that side of our team now. He is a brilliant, brilliant guy that's really been able to take it beyond. It's one thing to dream the dream, and then, like I say, like execution's Everest. So, like, to take those pieces and really execute them is another kind of a thing altogether, right?
Yeah, and you guys are.
He's such a brilliant educator. And so we're really fortunate to have that guy on our team. And so we've
Mm-hmm.
got this whole experiential learning kind of a school. I mean, you guys, we're involved with you guys in a lot of this too. So, and probably you might have
Yeah,
even
yeah,
talked about this stuff on this
yeah,
podcast before. But, we're trying to incorporate just not only like, it's everything from wellness to mental to educational to spiritual to creative to musical
yeah,
to, so it's so many touch points here, right? And the thing about the community is that it's something also for the artists that we work with, because it's bigger than all of us are
yeah,
and bigger than
yeah,
our thing alone, right?
yeah,
And
exactly.
so I think it's been a real great thing for all of us here. And we've had such great support, from the music
I
community, the art community, you name it.
It's amazing to go into the space at ArtHaus because every time I come by, I run into somebody new that I've never met before that's sometimes in the industry or sometimes in an adjacent industry. It's like this house with an open door policy. And just by virtue of being there, you end up being connected. And there's something synchronistic about it. There's an energy and a vibration that feels like you didn't know you were supposed to meet that person, but somehow you crossed their path because of the magic of what you have built. And it is just so incredibly special, Sandy. So, for anyone who's listening right now who hasn't checked it out, if you are local, please do check out ArtHaus and ArtHaus Community. There's really something just unique. And I think one of the things that inspires me about you, Sandy, because in this music business, it can feel, and I know that it has been, this dog eat dog. It's kind of competitive and everyone's kind of vying for the same spots and the same financing and everything. And you don't carry that energy
Yeah, you know what?
like at all.
I'm a really big believer. First of all, on the art house side, I do want to just say it's just not me alone. I have an incredible team here, from Cormac McGee to Ezra Fratley to Dr. Noah to Hannah Brennan to Trips. Like we have, so there's a lot of folks. But I'm a real big believer that we learn by osmosis. And in order to do that, we need to be together. And so the more different people that are attracted to our community or that we welcome in, the more we're going to learn, because that is how we learn in this industry. I'm a firm believer that we learn by being around each other. So I'm glad that you've seen that it's full of really great, inspiring people around here. Yay.
So I wanted to ask you, what's your best advice, Sandy, for emerging artists who may not have a lot of resources, don't have management, and want to really figure out how to start their career in the Canadian industry? What would you say to them?
I think they should try to go to, as you know, there's so many free seminars, whether it's through you guys, Conscious Economics, whether it's through SEMA, whether it's through the Music Ontario offices. I mean, you name it, there's so many free kind of learning opportunities out there because of the internet. And
Mm-hmm.
the opportunities that were never, frankly, there even 10 years ago. So I think, try to go to all that kind of stuff. Try to
Mm-hmm.
see if you can find yourself a women mentor. I know for a fact that the women that are in the industry now, where we've all kind of come up together, whether it's Shauna DeCarcia from Six Shooter, Suda from Starfish, I mentioned Sherry. There's so many women now in the industry. And I think try to align yourself with someone like that and see if you can get mentorship. Look, even Advanced is offering all kinds of mentorship opportunities, women in music. Join those organizations, because oftentimes it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
cost money to even join them, or it's a
Mm-hmm.
very small fee for what you're going to get back. And
Right.
try to
Okay.
really see if you could align yourself, because I know for myself, I want to help women rise in the
Yeah.
industry. I really think this is the future of this industry and just what's going
Yeah,
on.
100%. It is amazing that there are so many resources available
Yeah.
in Canada now. So I do think that that's beautiful. Now, one thing that, and this may be a little bit personal, but it's something we talk about on the show a lot. At Conscious Economics, we really focus on the emotional relationship that we have with money and the psychology of money. As an entrepreneur, as a businesswoman, you must have your own unique relationship with money. Would you be open to sharing a little bit about that journey? Like, what was your early imprinting around money from your family, and how did that play into how you ran your business and where you're at now?
Okay, sure. Well, I'm an immigrant, right? And I've come to this country. Our parents wanted a better life for us, but we also were fleeing a really politically charged war torn situation. So whenever that happens,
Mm,
you can bet that those people are coming to this country with no money or very little money, because it's always a situation where you've had to flee some way,
mhm,
somehow. So certainly that doesn't make you live in the heart of abundance when you come into a country and a foreign country like that with very little. So we've grown up really, really poor. I mean, like I tell this story and I'm like, you can't make this shit up. But the 5 kids in my family slept this way on a bed as opposed to straight, because
yeah,
5 of you
yeah.
on a bed, or like we would
Mm,
buy one Coca-Cola and one bag of chips and sit in a circle and pass it around till it was all gone. I mean, so
mm,
it was crazy times.
Mhm.
And both my parents worked in a restaurant. So really, my brother and I have raised the kids. And it was tough, for many, many years. It was really, really tough. But, again, but we came from such a beautiful, loving family. And so that made up for a lot. Obviously, you didn't but
Mhm.
like, so, I still remember, I mean, we didn't grow up celebrating Christmas because I'm Hindu. But when we moved to Canada, we wanted to do all the things that people here did. So Christmas was such a
Mhm.
time at school that you learned about and, all the things leading up to it. And so I still will never forget. And it's a traumatizing story, but now it's
Oh
taken a
man.
different shape. But I went all the way by bus to buy, like, I think for my brothers, like a G.I. Joe or something like that. It was some kind of an action figure thing, and they really wanted it. And then I'd bought a spirograph set that the five of us could all play, right? Because that was that thing that you could, And as I got close to my house, I left both things on the bus, and it was Christmas
Oh
Eve.
no.
And I just wept and wept because there was like, that was the only money. And we had saved it. I saved it. We had a
Oh.
paper route, my brother and I, and we had decided this is what we would buy the family. And I had a little tiny fake little Christmas tree. And we're like, that's what we're going to do. We're going to celebrate Christmas like everyone else
Aw.
here does. So definitely, I always like dreamed that someone would come and dump a bag of dough. As a kid, I really, really did. I fantasize. Imagine if you opened your door and someone had left a whole bag of money out there for you. Like, oh
Oh
my
man.
gosh. And also, the backdrop of this, like for immigrant families, like I think for my parents, there was a lot of shame in that because definitely when
Mm.
you're living like that, it's just, we had come from a very different reality, right? Like where we were, we had come to where we were coming now. And so I think there was a lot of shame tied into that. But the one
Mm.
thing our parents always told us is we could do anything we wanted and really,
Mm.
really loved us. So that was in aces. Right? We
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
questioned where we loved or so yeah, my relationship to money, and I always believed, my brother and I had a paper route. We got offered like very early on, we had won a contest to go to Disneyland or something like that. We came in second, but we're like hustlers, when you grow up
Yeah, yeah. Get
you're a
it.
hustler, man. You know the street. You know it great, right? Like you don't know a
Yeah.
lot of other
Yeah.
shit maybe, but you know that hustle. And
Yeah.
so I think for me, my parents, we at some point came out of that. And I have a really successful family. My brother's like chief of hydro out west. My sister's doctor of philosophy. My other brother's so my whole family's quite successful.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
a lot
Yeah.
of it is just because of I often think I did this kind of therapy, the EMD therapy where it's like you come
Yeah.
out of your trauma and it's what makes
Yeah.
you. And I knew I was never going to be poor like that. And I was never going to be dependent on anyone for
Mm.
money. And I
Mm.
think we all did because when you grow up like that, you're either going to
Yeah.
go
You're
down
motivated.
the gutter in that way or you're going to come out the other side and go, that shit's not going to happen to me or my kids. You know what I mean?
Hell yeah.
So there was also just that drive. And then also, I've never done anything because of money. Our dad always said to us, don't ever do a job because you think it's going
Yeah.
to give you money. Do it because you love it. Passionate
Mm.
about it. Because if you do that, my mom said that too. If you do it from heart and from love, it's always going to work out the way it's supposed to.
Yeah.
So I
Right.
have this big faith and the universe will give that test. But I tell you honestly, what really changed my relationship to money as I grew older, and especially in the last, I would say 15 years, has been Serena Ryder. And
Mm.
she really, I forget exactly what we were talking about one day, and she has a very fluid relationship with money, and she always has.
Mhm.
Even though for her, she's grown up rags to riches, she can tell you her whole story about that.
Yeah.
And she has this really beautiful, non judgmental, fluid kind of a relationship with money. It's almost like she always trusts that what she needs will be there. So she's never looking for like
Mm.
more. And it's always worked out for her. And so really it was her saying to me one day, dude, you got to change your relationship to money. I remember being
Mm,
stressed on something or something about it and going, oh my God, I don't know if I can pay the rent for the office this month. We were in a church back then. And she said, dude, you got to change your relationship to money. You're looking at this the whole wrong way. You need to start to have a relationship with it from a really place of abundance and feeling like it's really, and then I want you to think about what that feels like when you're sitting in a place of abundance. Feel
mm,
the feeling, you know?
yes.
And
Yeah, absolutely.
but just to end, I have a crazy story just to tell you where I've come from.
Okay.
But very
Yes.
recently in the pandemic, I went to the Rabba to get some few groceries, and the woman behind the counter couldn't really speak English. I was trying to get whatever was behind the good type thing of Tylenol or whatever, and I was like, "Hey," and she couldn't understand what I said. And then she went somewhere, and she came back and she handed me a lottery ticket. And
What?
I was like, no. And then I understood she didn't understand. And I said, no, no, no lottery ticket. I don't buy lottery ticket. I
Yeah,
was like,
yeah.
I'd rather go to the casino. The chances are better sitting at the casino. You know what I mean? And so I was like, no, no, no
Yeah.
lottery ticket, no lottery ticket. I'm trying to explain to her, no, no want, whatever. And she tried to then, she understood, went back, tried to put it back into the machine. But of course, those machines, once you get them, they
Yeah,
don't,
you issue it, it
they,
won't
they
go
won't
in.
go back
Yeah.
in. And I was like, it took so long. By now, my ice cream's melting, my pierogies are thawed out. I'm like, oh my goodness. And also,
Oh.
I had a real feeling she was going to get fired because I could see the boss looking over, like with glaring,
Oh,
brutal
no.
eyes. And so I was like, okay, okay, no problem. I take the lottery ticket. So
Yeah.
here I am with this lottery ticket. And I get home and I'm like, okay, well, what is this? And I look and it was this kind of a lottery ticket that had all the winning numbers on it. So I look and I
Yeah.
go online. I'm like, well, this is really weird that like I don't ever get a lottery ticket. So the fact that this girl gave it to me, maybe, and I made a joke with her and said, if I win, I come back. Okay. I was
Yeah,
trying to like
yeah.
hand
Yeah.
gesture it,
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
And I got the lottery ticket. I got it home and I looked online at the thing and every fucking number that I had was on this thing. Oh
What?
my God, what have I won? What have I won? I couldn't believe it. And so I look and it's basically $500,000 is what I'd won. Right.
What?
So I was like, holy shit. So I phoned a friend of mine at their house and I said, listen, I said to my friend, can you please check this lottery number? I'm going to read it to you. I want you to go online. This is the type of lottery ticket it is. Can you go online? I'm going to read you the
Yeah.
numbers and you tell me if I have a winning ticket. And I made a whole, because he was in the house with some other people, go into the room, shut the door. I was like so
Yeah,
scared.
yeah, yeah.
I read all the
Ah.
numbers and he's like, "Oh my God, you have every single number, including the extra jackpot number." I go, "What do you think I won?" He's like, "I think you won $500,000." I was like,
Oh my
"Oh my God."
gosh.
So I walk around my house for like 20 minutes, like, "Oh my God," panicking. What do I do? Like, "Oh, okay, go put your shoes on. Go back to Rabba because definitely that girl's getting canned. Like, there's no that guy gave her such bad eyeballs, you know." Pull my shoes. I'm like, yeah, what am I gonna give her? And I'm like, oh my God, I gotta be able to give her something. So I go and all I've got is like a couple $100, I think, at the time at home. So I take the $200, whatever. I'm like, oh God, what should I give her? Go back in the house and get a blank check. I'm thinking, well, I want $500,000. First, I'm like, I'll give her 100. I go, no, fuck that shit. I'm gonna give her 250 because without her, I wouldn't have this ticket. I'd have never bought it.
Oh
Freaking take
man.
my check, my pen, start heading out the door. Phone rings. My friend's calling me back. Listen, I've been looking at those numbers you gave me, and I don't think that you won anything. And I go,
Oh
what are you
no.
talking about? I've already got my shoes on. I've got the check. I'm going
Yeah.
back to the rabbi. I don't think you've won. And I go, what do you mean? And he goes, well, that kind of a lottery ticket you have is a ticket that has the winning numbers
Oh
on it.
no.
But I tell you, I felt like so crazy. It's like the bases are loaded. It's the ninth inning. And you
Yeah.
felt that play. And I'd already felt the feeling. And I started laughing and laughing. And my friend's like, why are you laughing? You just went from being a millionaire.
Yeah.
I said, That's all it takes. You got to believe in the thing.
Just have the
You got to
feeling.
feel it.
Oh my
Anyway, so
goodness.
that's a really
Wow.
funny
You're
story.
hilarious,
That's
Sandy.
a really funny story.
Oh
So,
man. Well, I come from a long line of gamblers and lottery ticket players, and we also didn't have a lot growing up, and it was always what I heard is like, don't worry, one day we're going to win the lottery and all problems will be solved. And so that's not a great foundation. Thank you for sharing your story. I think it sounds like Serena has a really interesting philosophy that's working, and it's obviously, I think, beautiful actually to have the experience of growing up in the way that you did and being able to really honor what you do have. And I've seen that with your generosity and how you build and how you help others. And I think it's really a beautiful, beautiful thing. So thank you for sharing that. And my last question for you is really, and I know this is a deep one. Well, first, one fun thing. Who are your biggest musical influences?
my artist.
Your
I'm
artists?
an
Okay.
artist.
Okay.
Honestly, I've had such a remarkable career of representing the most remarkable talent this country
Yeah.
has had to offer. It's not always worked out, in terms of what you wish for your artist. And it takes so many pieces above and beyond
Yeah.
just the skill to make the music and put it out. There's so many other levers, at work and at play. And so, yeah, I really, really feel my artists are my biggest inspiration. Honest to goodness, I'm
Mm.
not even kidding you about that. And I've been blessed to work with the most remarkable talent, but not only talent, but beautiful human beings. And at the end of the day, I don't care how talented someone is. If they're a bunch of ding dongs, I don't want to work with them. So that's been my philosophy. Like it's just like want to work. And I've been blessed to always have my entire roster. I get not one person that I've worked with has been a ding dong. We've had
Yeah.
our ups and
Yeah.
downs and challenges and whatever has happens in this industry, but I've been really, really fortunate to represent some of the most remarkable artists out of this country, and
Mm.
for that, I'm so grateful.
Well, I think that like attracts like. So I think that that's
Aw.
really beautiful. And the last piece is really, we're all feeling the pressure of living in this moment on the planet. There's so much going on. It's overwhelming. And I really wonder how you see music playing a role in social change and in really making a better world. And I know you have so many incredible artists that have a message and carry a message of upliftment. And I think about Serena and all the work she's doing around wellness and mental health. So, just what is music's role in your mind in terms of helping the world and where we're at right now?
Yeah, that's a great question, Rhiannon. If you look at any massive movement in history, especially over the last like 20, 30 years, you will see that music's at the forefront of all those changes,
Mm,
whether you start with a Live Aid or the Hurricane Katrina stuff, or whether it's the Elton John's
mm-hmm.
aid things, or even, and those are big, big global movements. But even if we reduce that down to just within our own communities, music has the
Yeah.
power to heal. And I remember Julie Black always used to say this to me, and I was really blessed to represent her for many years. I love her dearly. And she would always talk about how music has a power, that we're so privileged to work with the arts like this, because I truly personally also believe it's the only place for change, because we can look at
Yeah.
politics and like that's fucked up on a regular basis. You know what I mean? It's a disaster what's going on.
Say it like it is, Sandy.
But I really feel we are so privileged to work in the arts, because I think that
Yeah.
that has the power to change, has the power to heal, has the power to move entire movements. I mean, if you think of Live Aid and, just think of all the movements that music's brought about. And because of music, those things have happened. Artists being
Yeah.
generous with their gifts. And so for that reason, I really get energized and feel blessed and lucky to work in this.
Mm,
I
mm.
have a job that affects change. And not
Yes.
every artist wants to
100%.
do that, but I feel like most artists, like it's a gift that's coming from somewhere else. I really look at it that way. It's our most close moment to the spirit, to God, call it whatever you want to call it.
100%. I agree. I do. I think that also in a world that feels that it's struggling from disconnection, that music lets us feel and allows us to feel again. And just by feeling, even if it's a hard feeling like sadness or grief, we're moving closer, closer together. And so it really resonates what you're saying. And I agree with that too. I think it's the language of the creator, music, and that all the universe is a song. It really is. It's all a vibration. It's all a song. And I keep reminding myself in these times, because it's so challenging to watch everything that's unfolding. But I remind myself that this story is a love story, and we are all a part of that. And through the pain and through the suffering and through the war and through the trauma, it's how we recognize the path that we don't want to continue to go down. And sometimes it's very real. The cost is very real, but eventually we wake up. And I hope and believe that we are waking up now. And thank you to leaders like you who are revolutionizing things and helping us to wake up. So thank you, Sandy. Thank you for being with us. It was such an honor to chat with you.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, I'm in tears almost listening to that. It's like, that was beautiful. Thank you, Rhiannon. I love you. Thank you for having me on
Love
here.
you. And that was Sandy. I hope you enjoyed that conversation. She is such a visionary, such a hilarious person to spend time with. And she makes me laugh so much because when you meet Sandy in person, like, she really is just so chic and always so fashionable and put together. And then she's like, also swearing like a sailor at times, which is my kind of person. And she's just hilarious. She says it like it is. She's got so much wisdom to share, and we just really appreciated having her on. So if you're enjoying these conversations and you've been listening and you want to help us out, the best way to do that is to like, subscribe, share, depending on the platform that you're on, comment, and we thank you if you do that. So we hope to see you again in just 2 weeks' time with our next episode. Stay well, keep warm, and have fun.